YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
The market also responded to new ways that wars are being fought. Think about this. Ukraine and Israel both able to attack within their enemy's borders. Drones, artificial intelligence, robots, that's going to dominate the battlefield. On that score, in fact, the United States has officially launched what they call Detachment 201, Executive Innovation Corps. Over the weekend, we had tech leaders from Palantir, Meta, OpenAI. They all became Army Reserve officers. This is huge.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. This is a very important video that I've been waiting to put out, and I hope you will share this with others so they can see how, while they have you distracted, and while they have regular people thinking about terms like the United States being a democracy and they're talking about fascism, what you never hear about is what they're really doing, which is building out technocracy. The United States of technocracy is forming right before our eyes, and it's technocracy through communism or vice versa. Communism through technocracy. Most people don't even know what technocracy is and the connection to technocracy with Elon Musk, which I've warned people about for years. Technology is the vessel that they're going to use to bring in this authoritarian surveillance state that is already forming before our eyes. And this is evidence of that. Because things like this are happening right in front of our eyes. The mainstream media barely reports on it. That was a clip from Fox News where they want you to be excited about it. But what people don't realize is that this technology, giving the power to big tech companies by giving these people like Palantir, Meta, OpenAI, and thinking machines, swearing these people into the U.S. Army as lieutenant colonels. Think about that. You have these guys who have never been to boot camp. They have no training whatsoever. These are the same people who are constantly on television talking about misinformation and disinformation, whatever it is in their eyes. They're the ones who are trying to mold your perspective and your opinion by suppressing free speech and suppressing other people's opinions other than theirs. They are taking control of the world's minds because they're the ones who are controlling all of big tech. And now they're getting involved with the military and what they're calling Detachment Unit 201, the Executive Innovation Corps. And this is 4 people. We have Shyam Sankar from Palantir, who has openly talked about building a centralized government, which revolves through technology. You have Andrew Bosworth of Meta, who nobody trusts, right? Nobody trusts Palantir. Nobody trusts Meta. We have Kevin Weil of OpenAI. And of course, we have the connection between OpenAI and what Donald Trump is trying to install with the AI governance infrastructure in America. Then you have Bob McGrew of Thinking Machines Lab. These people have no background in the military. They have never been to boot camp. They have no training whatsoever, but they are now lieutenant colonels in the United States military. They've gone from being civilians working at tech companies to having power in the United States military. And for anyone that doesn't know what a lieutenant colonel is in the U.S. military, lieutenant colonel is a senior officer rank, specifically a field grade officer ranked above major and below colonel. It's the equivalent of a commander in the Navy and Marine Corps. So these people are being handed power in the United States military. And you don't hear this mentioned on the news because, again, big tech working hand in hand with the CIA, working hand in hand, obviously, with all of the media outlets out there. It's only mentioned on Fox News because they're going to convince conservatives that this is a wonderful thing. Obviously, we've heard about Palantir's involvement in the Mossad and everything going on in Israel and Gaza. And now we have just pivoted into a dystopian sci-fi film. That's what we have pivoted into. These big tech executives are sworn in as lieutenant colonels. They have no background, they have no training, they have no reason to be there, and nobody in general has much trust in big tech. It's just that the majority of people are addicted to big tech. If you ask people out there, they're not looking at Mark Zuckerberg, Democrat or Republican, and loving Mark Zuckerberg. Most people can't stand the sight of Mark Zuckerberg. When you talk about all of these big tech guys, nobody likes them. Nobody looks at them and says, hey, those are my heroes. Most people look and they cringe, but they're addicted to these platforms. And everybody's just too busy fighting with one another about what one person can say, what another person shouldn't be allowed to say. And think about how many thousands of veterans who have spent decades in the Army earning their status through battling on the battlefield. No, the battles that they're involved in are not really what they're told. They're actually battling for all of the training. And all of a sudden, these guys are put in higher positions. They're outranked by the heads of Palantir and Meta. So this now gives big tech insiders military level access to classified projects. And these are the people who are building a surveillance infrastructure through technology in the United States of America, who are now working hand in hand openly with U.S. military and being handed authoritative powers within the actual government. And this is the move into a technocracy. Okay? Donald Trump has already told everybody that Palantir, the secretive tech company, is going to be involved in all of these operations involving ICE and deportations. And conservatives are cheering for this because they're so deeply invested and deeply rooted in the PSYOP about the border and obsessed over the border that they don't care about what this means for privacy for Americans, and they certainly don't seem to care about what's coming with the digital ID because they don't understand the end game with bringing in a digital ID. The pivot from the digital passport with COVID, which was always their plan, which most people pushed back on, they pivoted from that and started this border PSYOP around the earth in the UK, in America, all these countries that are having issues securing their border conveniently, and they're all calling for a digital ID so that we can make sure that no illegals get in. And that just gives them what they wanted all along, which is total control through a digital ID of your speech, of your bank accounts, of all your information. They have access and control to everything because you will be doing everything online through a digital ID, or you won't be able to buy or sell online anymore. Thus, the mark of the beast. So for anybody out there that's wondering, in a technocracy, the government has control of society and it's controlled through technology, through an elite group of technical experts. A technocracy is a model of governance wherein decision makers are chosen for office based on their technical expertise and background. A technocracy differs from a traditional democracy in that individuals selected to a leadership role are chosen through a process that emphasizes their relevant skills and proven performance as opposed to whether or not they fit the majority interests of a popular vote. The individuals that occupy such positions in a technocracy are known as technocrats. An example of a technocrat could be a central banker who is a trained economist and follows a set of rules that apply to empirical data. This is why you see guys like one of the founding CEOs of Palantir smiling on the magazine cover of businesses like Forbes, and it says, "Meet Big Brother." This is why you hear guys like Elon Musk openly talk about making the Mars technocracy real, accelerating Starship development to build the Martian technocracy, and of course the connection between Elon Musk's grandfather, Joshua N. Haldeman, who is one of the founders of the initial technocracy movement. It is the rise of techno-authoritarianism, ladies and gentlemen, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. Think about what they've been doing. In a technocracy, there's no politicians. The majority of sheeple will cheer for this, and rightfully so, because all these guys involved in Congress aren't real politicians. They're all actors. They're doing what they can to make Republicans and Democrats hate one another and hate these specific politicians so much so that people will be cheering for a technocracy in the future, not realizing that this is what human enslavement looks like. This is what it looks like. They own the right to free speech. They own the right to what you can buy and sell online when they tell you that you can only buy things online. Eventually, when everything is shut down, when they cause more fake outbreaks, when they tell you that suddenly stores can't exist anymore because they can't afford to rent the space anymore, and it's easier for them to just do all this stuff via the internet because nobody wants to go outside anymore. And when you have a carbon footprint, you won't be allowed to anyway. So suddenly, if you want to buy ammo or a gun per se, you'll have to do it through the internet. And of course, you won't be able to because when they see what you're doing online and what you're talking about online or what you're typing in or your thoughts online or what you're looking at online, well, your social credit score will be so low you'll never be able to buy ammo again, that's for sure. You won't be able to buy a steak anymore. You won't be able to buy anything. This is what we're moving towards right in front of our faces, where they can come out and admit to this stuff, where they can tell you that, hey, we've suddenly, this isn't weird, right? Nobody's going, is that strange? Because nobody knows about it. Nobody knows that these guys quietly were made lieutenant colonels in the U.S. Army. These guys who have no military training whatsoever. Well, what? Because they're smarter than everyone else? So they're going to train everybody, and they're going to train people through technology, right? On how to monitor and track and obviously use surveillance on the citizens. This isn't for them to look at other countries and what's going on in Russia. This is for your own military to be used against you, weaponized against the people. This is why it needs to stop. This is why people need to start looking at the biggest enemies of humanity are right in front of our faces. It's these people who run these big tech companies. And you could sit there and you could say, well, what can we do about it? Well, we need to slowly remove ourselves from the internet. As hard as that sounds. And you could sit here and you say, well, you're online, you're posting to the internet, don't be a hypocrite. I totally understand. But I'm doing this to try to get people to start moving away from the internet. Because eventually I'm not going to be on the internet anymore. I'm taking the steps in my personal life to try to move offline, to not use the internet anymore, to go back to the way people used to live, because all of their power is rooted in us using the internet. That's why they're moving forward now with this new world order, this communist technocracy, because they know that nobody is going to go offline, that the majority of people spend 15 hours minimum on the internet. They're on their phones constantly. At work, they're online. They're now buying their groceries online because of COVID, right? Which was part of the plan to get you to purchase everything online. Get everything done online. Get used to doing education online. Everything is going to move towards the internet. And then they have full control. Because when everything's on the internet and businesses close down and storefronts close down and people don't want to put their kids in school anymore and the government says, well, if you want to homeschool, you got to do it through what we tell you got to do it through, which is you could do it through AI, you could do it through our educational system online. Most parents will obviously get peer pressured into doing it, be fearful that if they don't, they might get arrested. Maybe they will, because I'm sure there'll be rules in place that you have to follow their education system. And of course, then they could groom your children's behavior and their ideologies, which is what their goal is all along. These are the people that talk about behavioral control. The heads of Palantir, the heads of Meta. They talk about controlling you, how we can control your behavior, what's good behavior and what's bad behavior, right? Clearly, they look at me and you as bad people with bad behavior. And they've trained people to think that about us. All we're doing is asking questions and critically thinking. Think about how many people, flag videos like this and say this is bad. And they've been trained like little communist puppets into thinking that we're all awful people. Oh, they're violent. They're raising their voices. They're questioning the government. How dare they? Right? On the flip side, they're turning all these people into cupcakes. Oh, words hurt them, make them cry, right? Baseball players crying in the middle of baseball games because a fan heckles them. And people saying that person should be thrown in prison and lose their rights to ever go to a baseball game ever again. Molding behavior. That's what you're seeing happening right now. And the more power they get is only through us. Because the more we're dependent on the internet, these people gain total access and control of all of us. People need to start slowly removing themselves from the internet so that these people have to pull back on what they're doing. Their foot's on the gas pedal. And the more that we are dependent and allow them to push us into doing everything online, the more control they'll have. That's with banking. That's with buying groceries. That's with everything. Everything. Including personal interactions and how often people would rather FaceTime than drive somewhere to see a relative, or boyfriends and girlfriends meeting more on the phone on FaceTime than they do in person, actually, at this point, right? And they've even been rubbing this in our faces with predictive programming. Here's a movie that just came out on HBO called Mountainhead, where literally the plot are these big tech guys who go up and meet in the middle of nowhere, brag about their money, and then watch the world burn around them. And of course, why is the world burning around them? Well, it's burning around them because of them, because they manipulate the news, they censor free speech, they keep you in a vacuum. And of course, these are the people responsible for all of the fighting that goes on in the world, working with the government, causing these psyops and false flags, making people want to create chaos. And of course, their motto is order out of chaos. Look at this movie. Talk about predictive programming while we see 4 big tech nerds being put in our United States Army as lieutenant colonels.
Hope you rich folks don't mind slumming it, but this is exactly why I built Mountainhead. 4 presidents of tech. Get yo net worth on!
Guys, is this on every channel?
There have been a number of occurrences since your launch.
Are now openly attributing the recent uptick in ethnic tension to powerful new generative AI tools unveiled last week on Tram.
Your platform has inflamed a volatile situation, violence, chaos, and people are dying.
We are the smartest men in America. We literally have the resources to take over the world.
Might have just become humanity's global HQ.
Boom.
The president wants to speak to us.
I can handle Argentina and Paraguay.
We could probably buy Haiti.
The world wants your algorithm to stop being racist.
Right, so they don't hide it. They put movies like this. You think it's a coincidence that at the same time that these guys get promoted to lieutenant colonels without any military training, that this movie comes out? Because that's what they do. That's how predictive programming works. They fictionalize the truth. Your brain sees this and thinks that this is fiction. So when you actually even see a news story like what I just showed you, what's really happening in the world, you're just going to look at it and dismiss it. Well, it's not like that. It's not like a movie. Meanwhile, all these movies that people look at as fiction have become reality. All the stuff we see happening around us, right? All the movies about outbreaks, Contagion, Outbreak the movie, right? Then it happens in real life. How many movies have actually come to fruition? The training that they've done with alien movies as they plan for a fake alien deception that they have been working on for a long period of time, right? These are things that they do right in front of us, always, day in and day out. That is predictive programming. They reveal these things to us. They show you in the movie what the future holds for the world. It looks a lot like what's happening in the world, right? Riots, chaos, people getting promoted online who are really pushing misinformation versus how those specific people are the ones who are not only censoring speech, but removing people from the internet who are speaking against them or actually exposing who they are and what they're doing. Big tech is at the core of all of it. All of the division, everything that's a problem in the world. You could look at technology. You could look at social media. You could look at what the internet allows, what is allowed to exist on the internet that they could clearly wipe off. I'm talking about all the rings and the trafficking and stuff. The dark web, they call it. The government allows those things to exist because they're behind those things. The internet is a swamp that they created, and they've sucked people into it. And we're now living in a digital realm. We have the physical realm and the digital realm, and now they're going to mix the two together. And of course, we're talking about transhumanism. So this story is completely them admitting to our faces that they are building out a technocracy around us. And people need to become familiar with what a technocracy means. It's total control in the hands of people that you don't trust, that aren't elected, that have no right having this type of authoritarian power. And on top of that, these are the same people who say that their goal is to mold people's behavior. What does that mean? What does that mean? That means to make a world of people that they deem perfect people, that all think the same, that act the same, and they act and think the way that they train them to act while they silence the rest of us. Tell people about this. This is ridiculous. This is what people need to be aware of and talking about, not the other crap that the alt-right media continues to make people aware of. And it's interesting that this is mentioned on Fox News as opposed to being mentioned on CNN or CBS or NBC, because clearly they want conservatives to be on board with this. And these conservatives are getting duped into not only the building out of a surveillance state, but the building out of a communist technocracy, something that you would think they'd be opposed to, but they can't even see it because they aren't paying attention to it because they're getting their news and information from controlled media. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.